I sat at the small desk in the guest room, the faint smell of lavender from the candle Jason's wife had insisted on lighting that afternoon still lingering in the air. I ran my hands over the smooth surface of the notepad, feeling the sharp edges of the paper. For the first time in months, I felt something akin to clarity. A fire had started in me, burning away the fog of grief, of confusion, of helplessness. I had trusted Jason. I had believed in the family we'd built together. But that trust had been eroded piece by piece, and the slap from Cassie was the final insult. I wasn't just angry. I was calculating, focused, and determined. I would take back control of my life, but I had to be strategic. I made a list. First, I would get my things out of their house, my clothes, the family heirlooms that meant something, the furniture that Richard and I had carefully chosen together. I didn't need much, but I needed the things that made me feel like I was still someone. I needed to take my dignity with me too. Second, I would take back what was rightfully mine. The trust, the business accounts, the money Jason hadn't known about. Richard had protected me in ways I hadn't realized until now. My husband had known the man Jason was becoming, and he'd taken steps to ensure I wouldn't be left helpless. I wouldn't let my son steal from me anymore. But the most important part, revenge, required precision. I needed leverage. I needed something Jason would never see coming. Cassie had made her position clear. I wasn't welcome in their home anymore. And as long as they thought I had nothing, as long as they assumed I was at their mercy, I would remain vulnerable. But Jason didn't know the full extent of Richard's planning. Jason didn't know how much was still hidden, how much I still controlled. What he didn't know was that Brennan Accounting Solutions wasn't just a business, it was a weapon. Richard had built that business from the ground up, and it wasn't just about numbers, it was about relationships, trust, power. There were clients, partners, legal agreements, things Jason had never bothered to understand. He thought he was in control because he held the deed to the house, because I had signed away my rights in the heat of my grief. But I had the real power, and I was going to make sure he understood that. The phone call with David at the bank had been a revelation, but I needed more. I needed to confirm everything Richard had left in place. I needed to meet with the lawyer who had handled the trust. I needed to find out if there were any other assets I didn't know about. I made a list of things to do. 1. Call the lawyer, set up a meeting. 2. Move my belongings out of Jason's house. 3. Secure the business accounts, check the records, make sure there were no more withdrawals. 4. Find a new place to live, somewhere quiet, somewhere I could think. 5. Start gathering information on Cassie. What were her weaknesses? What was her past? I wasn't just going to leave. I wasn't just going to disappear into some nursing home. Jason and Cassie had made a terrible mistake if they thought I was going to let them push me around. The next morning, I woke early. I dressed in a simple grey sweater and jeans. Nothing fancy. I didn't need fancy. What I needed was efficiency. After a quick breakfast of coffee and toast, I made my first call. The lawyer who'd helped Richard set up the trust. The line rang, and then a voice answered. "Good morning, Mrs. Brennan. This is Sandra. How can I help you today?" "I need to schedule a meeting," I said. "I have some questions about the trust my late husband set up." Sandra hesitated, then said, "Of course, Mrs. Brennan. I'll check our calendar. Would you be available this afternoon?" "I'll make time," I said. "Let's make it happen." We set the time, and I ended the call feeling a little bit lighter. The pieces were starting to fall into place. I spent the next few hours packing up my things. The room I had been given was small, and the space was sterile, a stark reminder of how little I meant to Jason and Cassie now. The walls were bare, and I didn't bother to hang anything. I grabbed a few framed photos of Richard and me, Some of the things I'd kept when Jason convinced me to leave the house. A few books, the clothes I'd need. Then I made sure to lock up the rest of my belongings. I wasn't sure when or if I would be back, but for now, they could stay behind. By noon, I was ready to leave. I took a last look around the room before closing the door behind me. I couldn't stay there any longer. I needed to get out before they even realized what I was doing. I drove to the lawyer's office, the car's engine humming steadily beneath me, a soft rhythm that calmed my nerves. The office was in a nondescript building downtown, and as I walked in, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the years that had passed since Richard had handled this business. How much had changed? How much had stayed the same? Sandra led me into a small conference room where I waited for the lawyer. He was an older man with thin grey hair and a warm smile, though I could see the sharpness in his eyes. "Mrs. Brennan," he said as he shook my hand. "It's good to see you. I trust everything has been well?" I smiled faintly. "Well enough, but I've got some questions." He nodded and sat across from me. "Of course. What can I help with?" "I want to know everything about the trust, the details, the conditions, and who has access to it. I need to understand what Richard left for me." The lawyer's expression shifted slightly, his eyes narrowing with some recognition. "I see. You want a full accounting? Very well. I'll pull up the documents, but I must remind you that the trust is legally protected. You have full access, of course, but there are certain rules in place for disbursements and transfers. It's not something that can be done hastily." "I understand," I said. "I'm not here to rush anything. I just need to know what's mine." He nodded, then turned to the computer to pull up the information. As the details unfolded, I saw the full scope of Richard's foresight. The trust was designed to protect me, yes, but it was also designed to be a safety net, an insurance policy. Richard had thought of everything. After an hour of going over the legalities, I had the answers I needed. I thanked the lawyer and left, feeling more empowered than I had in months. But there was still one more thing to do. I drove straight to Brennan Accounting Solutions, my mind racing. I had to be sure. I had to know that everything was in place, that the business was still operational and intact. The office was quiet when I arrived. Most of the employees were out at lunch, and I was met by one of the junior accountants. He looked up as I entered. "Mrs. Brennan," he said, surprised, "how can I help you today?" "I'm here to see the records," I said firmly. "I need to make sure everything's in order." He hesitated, clearly unsure of how to respond, but I wasn't about to be deterred. I'd built this business with Richard. I had every right to be there. He led me to a small back office, where I was able to access the financial records. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and I quickly reviewed the accounts. There were withdrawals, yes, small ones, but nothing that couldn't be explained. Jason had been careful, but not careful enough. I pulled up the most recent transactions. There it was. A large deposit, one that had gone unnoticed by Jason. It was a transfer into a separate account that Jason hadn't known about. Richard had been one step ahead of him, just like I was now. I smiled to myself. Jason had no idea what was coming, and neither did Cassie. Monday morning, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I called Patricia Grant, who'd handled our business contracts 15 years ago. She remembered me. "Martha Brennan," she said warmly. "I was so sorry to hear about Richard. How are you holding up?" "I've been better," I said. "Patricia, I need help. It's complicated. Come in today. I'll make time." Her office was downtown, glass and chrome, and the smell of expensive coffee. Patricia was 60, sharp-eyed, with silver hair cut short. She listened without interrupting while I explained everything. The deed transfer, the isolation, the slap. The accounts Jason didn't know existed. When I finished, she sat back. "Do you want to take back the house?" "I want to take back my life," I said. and I want them to understand what they've done." Patricia smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Then we have work to do." Over the next week, I moved carefully. I found an apartment first, a nice 2-bedroom place with hardwood floors and big windows. I signed the lease myself, paid 6 months up front. The landlord barely glanced at my bank statement before approving me. Then I hired movers, professional ones. I gave them a detailed list: the antique dining table Richard and I bought in Vermont, the bedroom set from our first apartment, my grandmother's china, the photographs, the books, everything that was mine before Jason was born or that Richard and I had acquired together. I scheduled them for Saturday at 9 a.m. Friday night, Jason came to my room. He knocked first, which was progress. "Mum, can we talk?" "Of course." He sat on the edge of the bed, looking uncomfortable. Jason was 32, tall like his father, but he had my eyes. I'd once thought that meant something. "Cassie feels bad about the other night," he said. "She didn't mean to hit you." "Yes, she did. She was frustrated. You have to understand, Mom. We're under a lot of stress. The bills, the mortgage." "The mortgage on the house I bought?" He flinched. "We've been over this. You wanted us to have it. You said you couldn't handle the upkeep alone." "I was grieving, Jason. And we were there for you." I looked at him, really looked at him. When had my son become a stranger? When had he learned to lie so smoothly? "I'm moving out tomorrow," I said. His face went hard. "Where are you going to go? You can't afford—" "I can afford plenty." "With $12,000? Is that what you've been checking? My checking account?" He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I'm your power of attorney. I have a right to monitor your finances." "No, Jason, you don't. I never signed any power of attorney documents." "Yes, you did. After Dad died, you signed—" "I signed the deed transfer, nothing else. Check with your lawyer if you don't believe me." He stood up, angry now. "You're making a mistake. Where are you even going to go?" "I found an apartment, downtown, 2 bedrooms in case I ever have guests who actually want to visit me." "You can't do this. Watch me." He left, slamming the door. I heard him arguing with Cassie downstairs, their voices rising and falling. I didn't care. I was done caring what they thought. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. The movers showed up at 9 sharp, 3 efficient men with a truck. I handed them my list and watched as they began loading furniture. Jason came storming out at 9:15. "What the hell is this?" "I'm moving out, I told you." "You can't take this furniture. This is our house." "This is your house," I agreed. "But this furniture belonged to Richard and me. I'm taking what's mine." Cassie appeared behind him in her bathrobe. "Call the police, Jason. She's stealing from us." I pulled out a folder. "Here's the receipt for the dining table. 2008, Vermont Furniture Designs. Here's the receipt for the bedroom set. 1995, bought the month Richard and I moved to this neighborhood. I have documentation for everything they're loading." "You can't do this," Cassie repeated, but her voice had lost its certainty. "Actually, I can. These are my possessions. Feel free to call the police if you think otherwise. I'll wait." They didn't call. They stood on the porch, watching as the movers carried out piece after piece. The dining table where we'd celebrated Jason's birthdays, the bookshelf Richard built by hand, the rocking chair I'd nursed Jason in 32 years ago. "Mum," Jason said finally, "please, can we talk about this?" "No. You're being vindictive. I'm being clear." The movers finished by 11. I did a final walkthrough of the guest room, making sure I had everything. On the dresser, I left an envelope with a check inside. $5,000. "For the utilities," I told Jason. 3 months' worth by my calculation. After that, you're on your own." Cassie grabbed the envelope, opened it, stared at the check. $5,000? Where did you— Goodbye, Jason, I said. I hope the house makes you happy. I walked out to my car. Behind me I heard Cassie's voice rising in confusion, Jason's answering in disbelief. I didn't look back. My new apartment was perfect. The movers unloaded everything and I tipped them well. By evening, I had the basics unpacked. I made dinner in my own kitchen, ate at my own table, slept in my own bed. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like myself. But I wasn't done, not even close. That afternoon, I left the coffee shop, the weight of Patricia's report heavy in my hands. My son, my only child, was in deep, much deeper than I'd realized. He wasn't just struggling, he was drowning. And yet, despite everything, he had used me, manipulated me, trying to take advantage of my grief and confusion. I had always believed in family, in loyalty, but I realized that my loyalty to Jason had been misplaced. His actions, his deceit, his manipulation, had shattered the image of him I had clung to for so long. Now I knew the truth. He was just as capable of dishonesty as Tom. Worse, he had allowed Cassie to be complicit in all of it. She was no innocent bystander. She had seen the cracks in the foundation and had chosen to step on the very people who had once helped her. As I drove home, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of calm wash over me. I wasn't the same woman I had been 2 years ago. That woman, the one who had signed the house over to Jason, who had trusted him without question, was gone. The woman I was now was cold, calculated, and more than capable of taking control. When I got home, I sat in the quiet of my living room, the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint sounds of traffic outside my window. I hadn't fully processed everything, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to be manipulated anymore. Jason had made his choices. He had lied to me. He had taken advantage of me. And he had done it all while pretending to be the son I once knew. But now I saw him for who he really was. The man who had betrayed my trust. The man who had let his greed blind him to the love I had given him. But Jason wasn't going to get away with it. I wasn't going to let him destroy me, and I wasn't going to let him get away with his lies. I wasn't the helpless old woman he thought I was. I had power now, and I would use it to make sure that he felt every ounce of pain he had caused. The next morning, I called Patricia. I want to make sure we're on the same page before I move forward, I said, my voice steady. I don't want to leave any room for mistakes. I understand, Patricia replied. What's your plan? I'm going to confront Jason, but this time I'm not going to back down. I'm going to make him feel what I felt, powerless, humiliated, betrayed. I want him to know that the world is not as forgiving as he thinks it is. And if he doesn't respond well? Then we go to the next step, I said, my tone firm. We take the documents I have, everything, and we show them to every client of Richard's who's still with the firm. We expose him. We make sure everyone knows exactly who he is. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Martha, I'm not saying you're wrong, Patricia said quietly, but this could be dangerous. What you're proposing could destroy him completely, not just financially, emotionally too. Do you really want to go that far? I didn't hesitate. Yes, he deserves to lose everything. Patricia sighed. I won't stop you, but think about it carefully. Once you go down this path, there's no going back. I hung up without responding, my resolve already hardening. Patricia was right in some ways, but I wasn't in a place to care. Jason had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. There was no going back for me either. The following week, I arranged a meeting with Jason. It was the first time I'd seen him face to face in months, and I felt a surge of something unfamiliar when I saw him sitting at the table in the cafe we used to frequent. His face was older, more drawn, but still familiar. He stood up when I approached, and for a moment I saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. He knew I had something on him, but he didn't know how much. I sat down across from him without speaking for a moment. I wanted him to feel the weight of the silence, to understand that this wasn't just a casual conversation. "Mom, I'm glad you agreed to meet," he began, his voice cautious. I folded my hands on the table. "Jason, I know everything." His face tightened. "What do you mean?" "I know about the house, about the loan, about the money you've been moving around. I know about Cassie's investment account and what you've been hiding from me." He shifted in his seat, his hands clenched. "Mom, You lied to me, Jason," I said, cutting him off. "You took advantage of me when I was grieving, and you thought you could get away with it. You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I was weak." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. "I'm not weak," I said, leaning forward. "I'm not the woman you thought I was, and I'm not going to let you get away with this." "Please," he said, his voice cracking. "I know I messed up. I'm sorry, okay? I was desperate. Cassie and we were in over our heads. But I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could fix it, but I didn't know how." "You should have asked for help," I said coldly. "But instead, you lied to me. You manipulated me, and I'm done. I'm done being your backup plan, Jason. I'm done being your fool." I pulled the folder from my bag and slid it across the table. He looked at it, confusion and fear in his eyes. "What's this?" "That's everything," I said. "It's the proof I've gathered. The bank statements, the loan documents, the investments, everything you've tried to hide from me. You've been living a lie, Jason. And now I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth." He stared at the papers, then looked up at me, his eyes full of tears. "Mom, please, I'm begging you. I never meant for it to get this bad. I didn't want to lose you." "You already have," I said, my voice flat. "You lost me the moment you decided I was a means to an end. You lost me when you thought you could take advantage of my trust, of my love." Jason's hands were trembling. "I'll fix it. I'll pay you back. I'll make everything right, I swear." I shook my head slowly. "You can't fix this. Not anymore." I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. Jason reached out to me, but I stepped back. "The first payment is due next week. You can start by making it right. But don't think for a second that this is over. There's more to come if you don't do exactly what I say." I turned and walked away, feeling the weight of the years of silence between us settling on my shoulders. But this time, it wasn't a burden. It was power. The power to finally stand up for myself, to stop being the victim in my own life. As I walked down the street, I realized something. This was the first step in reclaiming my life. I had been broken, but now I was whole again, stronger, sharper, and more in control than I'd ever been before. And Jason, he would learn. It was trust. It was respect. It was something you couldn't fake. I had already given him one last chance. The rest was up to him. The call came on Wednesday. Jason, his voice tight with stress. "Mom, we need to talk." "About what?" "Can you come to the house, please? It's important." I almost said no, but curiosity won. "I'll be there at 2. The house looked the same from outside, but when I walked in, I noticed details I'd missed while living there. Scuff marks on the walls, worn carpet. Cassie had expensive taste in furniture but no interest in maintenance. They were waiting in the living room. My living room, I corrected myself. Not anymore. "Mum, thank you for coming," Jason said. He looked exhausted. "We want to apologize." Cassie nodded, her face stiff. "I shouldn't have hit you. That was wrong." "Yes, it was." Awkward silence. "We've been under a lot of stress," Jason continued. "Financial stress, and we took it out on you. That wasn't fair. No, it wasn't. More silence. Jason glanced at Cassie. She glared back at him. Some argument they'd already had, playing out in looks. The thing is, Jason said carefully, we could really use your help right now. We've made some poor investment choices, and we're in a bit of trouble. How much trouble? He swallowed. About $100,000 would get us back on solid ground. I know that's a lot, but if you could just loan us... No. His face fell. Mum, please. We're desperate here. The bank is talking about foreclosure. Then you should have thought of that before you stole from me. Cassie shot to her feet. We didn't steal anything. You took money from my checking account. Small amounts, but consistently. 200 here, 500 there. Over 18 months, you stole nearly $20,000. Jason went white. How did you... I had someone review my statements. Every transaction you authorized through the account you thought you had access to. Every forged signature. I have documentation, Jason. I could go to the police right now. We're family, he whispered. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't manipulate. Family doesn't slap each other in restaurants. Cassie moved toward me, her face twisted. You have millions, and you're going to let us lose our house. My house, and yes, I am. Jason is your son. Jason is a thief. I turned to leave. Jason grabbed my arm. Mom, please, I'm begging you. We'll pay you back, every penny, with interest. Just help us. I pulled my arm free. You want my help? Then you'll accept it on my terms. Anything. You sell the house, pay off your debts. You and Cassie get jobs, real jobs, not these consulting things that barely cover your Starbucks habit. You live within your means. And in 5 years, if you've proven you've changed, I'll consider helping you then. 5 years, Cassie shrieked. We'll be homeless in 5 months. Then I suggest you start job hunting. I walked out. Behind me, Cassie was screaming. Jason was crying. I got in my car and drove away, my hands steady on the wheel. Patricia called that evening. Tom Willis made the first payment, $33,000 directly deposited. Good. Martha, are you sure about this? Jason is your son. I'm sure. Because there's a point where revenge becomes destruction, and you're approaching it. I looked out my apartment window at the city lights. Patricia, I spent 2 years being told I was worthless, being pushed aside, manipulated, abused. My own son did that to me. So yes, I'm sure. He needs to learn. Just be careful. Desperate people do unpredictable things. She was right. I knew she was right. But I couldn't stop now. Over the next month, I watched from a distance as Jason's life unraveled. The house went up for sale. They moved into a cramped apartment across town. Cassie got a job at a real estate office. Jason went back to the accounting firm where he'd worked before trying to become a financial consultant. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt empty. Then Jason called. Mum, Dad's birthday is next week. Could we have dinner? Just the 2 of us. Richard's birthday, November 12th. He would have been 60. All right, I said. But I choose the restaurant. I picked a small Italian place Richard and I used to love. Quiet, family-owned, red-checkered tablecloths. Jason was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, staring at his hands. He looked up when I sat down. Thanks for coming. Of course. The waiter took our order. We sat in silence until the wine arrived. Jason took a long drink, then set down his glass. I've been thinking about Dad a lot, he said, about what he'd think of me now. He'd be disappointed. Jason flinched but nodded. Yeah, he would. Mum, I know what I did was wrong. All of it. The money, the manipulation, letting Cassie treat you that way. I don't have an excuse. I was scared and stupid and greedy. Yes, you were. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I understand now. What I did to you. What I took from you. I studied his face. He looked older, tired, like he'd aged 5 years in 2 months. "Are you and Cassie staying together?" I asked. "I don't know. She blames me for everything. Maybe she's right to." Our food came. We ate in silence for a while. The pasta was good, rich and warm. Richard had always ordered the carbonara. "Do you remember," Jason said suddenly, "when I was 10 and I stole that model car from the hobby shop?" I did. He'd wanted it desperately, and I'd said no, we couldn't afford it that week. He'd taken it anyway, shoved it in his jacket. "Dad made you return it," I said. "He did. And he made me apologize to the owner, and then he sat me down and explained why stealing was wrong, not because I'd get caught, because it hurt people, because it broke trust, and trust, he said, was the only thing that really mattered. He believed that. I broke his trust. And yours, and I don't know how to fix it." I set down my fork. "Jason, I don't know if you can fix it. What you did, I know. But your father would want me to give you a chance." He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "One chance," I said. "Prove to me you've changed. Prove to me you understand what you did wrong. And maybe someday we can have a relationship again." "How do I prove it?" "Time, choices, actions, not words." He nodded slowly. "Okay, I can do that." We finished dinner. Jason paid, though I could see him wince at the check. Outside, we stood on the sidewalk, breath fogging in the November cold. "Happy birthday, Dad," Jason said quietly, looking up at the stars. "Happy birthday, Richard," I echoed. Jason hugged me. I let him. It was stiff, awkward, but it was something. "I'll call you," he said, "if you want." I watched him walk to his car, shoulders hunched against the wind. He looked small, beaten down. Part of me felt sorry for him, but only part. A year had passed since the slap in the restaurant, since I had started piecing my life back together. The road had been long, filled with decisions I never thought I'd have to make, decisions I never thought I could make. The bitterness that had once consumed me had softened, turned into something else, something that felt like a new beginning. But the scars were still there, faint reminders of a life I had left behind. I walked through my apartment one morning, as I did every morning, with an almost detached sense of peace. The space felt different now, comfortable, mine. The walls were adorned with photos of Richard and me, some of our happiest memories. The furniture was simple but carefully chosen. The sounds of the city outside were comforting, like the hum of a life that was now mine to live, on my terms. The last few months had been a blur of small victories, quiet moments, and rebuilding relationships I thought were broken beyond repair. Jason had changed. It had taken time, more time than I would have liked, but change wasn't something that happened quickly. It happened in fits and starts, in moments of realization and self-reflection. His struggle with guilt, his battle to make things right, had shifted something inside of me too. I had started to let go of the anger, bit by bit, each time I saw him take another step toward redemption. Lisa, too, had been a quiet source of support. I didn't see her often, but I knew she was there, steady and grounded. She was good for Jason, the kind of person he needed in his life, the kind of person I hoped he would always have by his side. But as the months passed, I found myself returning to my old habits, checking the bank accounts, monitoring the trust. It was a compulsion, I realized. A part of me still feared that Jason would slip back into his old ways, that the world he had built would collapse once again. But every time I looked, every time I checked, I saw the same thing: stability. He was paying me back, slowly but steadily. He was making changes, keeping his promises. He was rebuilding. I thought of the money in my account, the funds from the sale of the business, the revenge money I had once seen as a trophy. It didn't hold the same power over me anymore. I had let go of its weight, its sting. It had been a tool, a means to an end, and I had used it to settle the score. But now, it was nothing more than a reminder of a chapter I no longer needed to dwell in. One afternoon, Patricia and I sat together, as we often did, over a cup of coffee. She had been there through everything, through the anger, the hurt, the cold calculations, and now, the acceptance. "You've come a long way," she said, watching me carefully. "You're not the same woman I met in September." I smiled faintly, a little unsure of what to say. "I don't know if I've changed. I think I've just found my way back to who I was." "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe you're someone new now. Someone who's not driven by anger." "I'm not angry anymore," I said quietly, as if saying it aloud would make it more real. I don't even remember what it felt like, to be that consumed by it. Patricia nodded. "It's a good thing. You know, for a while there, I thought you were heading down a dangerous path. Revenge. It does something to a person." "I know," I said, looking out the window. "I wanted justice at first, but then it became something else. I think I was punishing myself more than I was punishing anyone else." She reached across the table, her hand resting gently over mine. "But you stopped, and that's what matters. Not the revenge, not the money, but that you chose to stop." "I did," I said. "I've stopped, and now I can breathe again." Patricia squeezed my hand. "You've found your peace." I nodded. "I think I have." And summer had rolled in, and with it, the weight of the year started to feel a little lighter. Jason had moved out of the apartment he'd once shared with Cassie, and although they'd both moved on in their own ways, I couldn't help but notice how much softer he was becoming. The hard edges of his personality had started to fade, replaced with something gentler, and though I hadn't expected it, I found myself proud of him. In late June he called, asking me to meet at a coffee shop. He had something important to discuss, he said. I arrived early, just like I always did, and saw him sitting at a table near the window, nervously stirring his coffee. There was something different about him, calmer, more grounded. I could see it in his posture, in the way he held himself. I sat down across from him, and for the first time in a long while, I saw him for what he was, my son. The boy I had raised, the man he was becoming. "Mum," he said quietly, his voice breaking slightly, "I want to apologize. For everything. For the way I treated you, for everything I did. I've been going to therapy, trying to figure out who I was, why I did what I did." I watched him, not speaking at first, just taking in the sincerity in his eyes. "And what did you figure out?" "Fear," he said, his eyes filled with a mix of regret and realization. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of letting everyone down. Fear of not living up to Dad's legacy. And because of that, I did things I'm not proud of. I hurt people. I hurt you. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table toward him. His eyes went to the envelope, then back to me, confusion and disbelief on his face. He opened it slowly, taking out the check inside. $100,000. His hands began to shake as he read the note Patricia had drawn up, the loan agreement, 5% interest, 10 years of repayment. "Mom," he whispered, his voice cracking, "I can't take this. I don't deserve it." "Yes, you can," I said firmly. "This isn't a gift, Jason. It's a loan, a chance to rebuild. You'll sign the papers and you'll pay it back, and you'll rebuild your life the right way. You'll start over. I don't deserve this," he repeated, tears filling his eyes. "No, you don't," I said. "But I'm giving you this chance because I believe you can be better. I'm giving you this chance because your father would have wanted me to." He signed the papers, his hands still trembling, but there was a shift in him, a recognition that this was the moment to prove himself, not just to me, but to himself. We sat there together for a while, drinking coffee and talking about everything and nothing. It wasn't easy, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. A start. By the fall, Jason had made incredible strides. He was paying me back steadily, always on time. He had found a better apartment, one that was just his. He'd started volunteering at a local shelter, taking on extra work. The anger that had once fueled him was being replaced by determination, by a desire to be the man he had always wanted to be, a man who was worthy of redemption. In September, exactly 1 year since everything had changed, Jason called. He had someone he wanted me to meet. "Her name's Lisa," he said, "and she's important to me. I want you to meet her, and I want to do this right. I want you to meet Emma, too." The word grandmother hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't sure what to make of it at first. But when I met Lisa and Emma, something inside of me softened. I watched Jason with her, with Emma, and I saw the man he was becoming. Not perfect, but real. "She's wonderful," I told Jason later. "I'm happy for you." "I know," he said, a quiet relief in his voice. "I'm trying to do this right." And so, the months passed, each one bringing new beginnings, small but steady steps toward healing. As October arrived, I found myself thinking about the future, about what Richard would say if he were here to see all of this. Would he be proud of the way I had rebuilt, of the choices I had made? I hoped so. I hoped he would see that I had found a way to live again. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't consumed by the past. The wounds were healing, and I was healing with them. "To new beginnings," Patricia had said at dinner, and I had raised my glass with her. To new beginnings, and to a future that felt possible again. November came again, Richard's birthday. This year, Jason and I went to the cemetery together. We brought flowers, stood quietly by the headstone. "I wish I could tell him I'm sorry," Jason said. "He knows." "How can you be sure?" "Because he believed in you, even when you didn't believe in yourself." We stood there until the cold drove us back to the car. Jason drove me home, and we sat in the parking lot talking for an hour, about Richard, about mistakes, about the future. "Mum," Jason said finally, "I want you to know. What you did, forcing me to face my consequences, it saved my life. If you'd just given me money, enabled me, I'd be worse now. I'd have learned nothing." "It was hard," I admitted, "watching you struggle. But necessary. I see that now." He hugged me goodbye. I watched him drive away, thinking about how far we'd come. Not back to where we were, that was impossible, but to somewhere new, somewhere honest. December. Christmas. Jason invited me to spend it with him, Lisa, and Emma. I bought thoughtful gifts, helped Lisa cook dinner. Emma opened her presents with squeals of delight, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I had a family again. January brought snow and quiet routines. I'd started volunteering at a literacy centre, teaching adults to read. It reminded me why I'd become an accountant in the first place. I loved helping people understand numbers, find clarity in chaos. Patricia and I had lunch once a month. She'd become a real friend, not just my lawyer. We talked about books, politics, our lives. "You seem happy," she said in February. "I am. Is that allowed?" "Of course it is. You earned it." February 14th, Valentine's Day. Jason sent me flowers with a card. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "Love, Jason." I called him. "The flowers are beautiful." Lisa helped me pick them out. She says I need to appreciate the people I love more. She's right. She's good for you. She is. "Mum, I'm thinking of proposing." "Is that crazy? It's only been 8 months. If you love her and you're ready to be the husband she deserves, it's not crazy at all." He proposed in March. Lisa said yes. They set the wedding for June, small and simple, just family and close friends. Will you come? Jason asked. I know weddings might be hard for you after. I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it. Planning the wedding, I watched Jason carefully. He was attentive to Lisa's opinions, considerate of her budget concerns. He didn't try to control everything or insist on expensive choices they couldn't afford. He'd learned. The wedding was perfect. Small church, simple reception, Emma as the flower girl. Lisa was beautiful in a modest dress. Jason cried when she walked down the aisle. During the father-daughter dance, Lisa's father had passed years ago, so Jason danced with Emma instead. I felt Richard's presence so strongly I turned around, expecting to see him. But of course, he wasn't there, just the memory of him, warm and real. At the reception, Jason pulled me aside. Mum, I need to tell you something. What is it? I've been making extra payments on the loan. I'm ahead of schedule. And I want you to know, every payment I make, I remember what I did. I remember what you taught me. I'm never going to forget. Good. Don't forget. But also don't let it define you forever. You're more than your worst mistakes. He hugged me tight. I love you, Mom. I love you too. April arrived with rain and budding trees. I was reading on my couch when my phone rang. Unknown number again. I hesitated, then answered. Is this Martha Brennan? Yes. This is Detective Harris with the Fraud Division. I'm calling about Thomas Willis. My heart sank. What about him? We've been investigating financial crimes at several accounting firms. Mr. Willis's name came up in connection with falsified documents and fraud. We understand you had a financial arrangement with him. I closed my eyes. Yes, but that was settled months ago. We'd like to talk to you about what you know. Would you be willing to come in for an interview? I called Patricia immediately. She came with me to the police station. In a grey room with harsh lights, I told them everything. The doctored financials, the way Tom had cheated Richard, the payment plan we'd arranged. Detective Harris took notes. You realize what he did was criminal fraud? Yes. Why didn't you report it? Because I wanted justice, not vengeance. I wanted him to make amends, not destroy his family. Mrs. Brennan, he didn't just defraud your husband. We've found evidence of at least 6 other clients he cheated. Some of them lost their life savings. The floor seemed to tilt. 6 others? At minimum. We need your documentation to build our case. I looked at Patricia. She nodded. Give them everything. I did. Every paper, every receipt, every recording of our conversations. I testified before a grand jury in May. Tom was indicted on 17 counts of fraud. His wife Sarah called me, crying. You promised you'd leave him alone. I did leave him alone. This is the police, not me. You gave them the evidence. He committed crimes, Sarah. Real crimes against people who trusted him. I'm sorry for you and your children, truly, but I couldn't protect him from justice. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, feeling sick, but also knowing I'd done the right thing. Tom's trial was set for September. I didn't have to testify. My deposition was enough. But I followed the news coverage. 6 victims testified about losing their retirement savings, their children's college funds. Tom's lawyer tried to paint him as a desperate man who'd made mistakes under pressure. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on 14 counts. Sentencing in November. I went to the sentencing hearing. I'm not sure why. Closure, maybe. Tom looked old, broken. His family sat behind him, sobbing quietly. The judge gave him 8 years in federal prison. Outside the courthouse, one of the victims approached me, an elderly woman named Grace. Mrs. Brennan, I wanted to thank you. Without your evidence, they never would have caught him. I lost $50,000 to that man. My husband's life insurance payout. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. You got us justice. That matters. She walked away. I stood on the courthouse steps, watching traffic, thinking about justice and revenge and the thin line between them. Jason called that evening. "Mom, I heard about the sentencing. Are you okay?" "I think so." "Jason, do you understand why I couldn't just let it go?" "Yes. He hurt people, lots of people. You did the right thing." "Even though it destroyed his family?" "He destroyed his family when he chose to commit fraud. You just exposed the truth." I hoped he was right. Thanksgiving arrived. Jason and Lisa hosted at their new apartment. Emma helped me make pumpkin pie. We ate too much, laughed at silly jokes, watched football without really caring about the score. "Next year," Lisa said, "we'll do this at a bigger place. We're looking at houses." "Houses? Can you afford that?" Jason smiled. "With my extra work and the promotion I got last month, yeah, we're doing okay. And Mum, I'm almost halfway through paying you back." "Take your time." "No, I want it paid off. I want to be free of that debt, emotionally and financially." December brought snow and Christmas again. Emma was 6 now, losing her front teeth, excited about Santa. Watching her tear open presents, I thought about how much had changed. 2 years ago, I'd been alone, bitter, plotting revenge. Now I had this: family, laughter, hope. January. 2 years since I'd discovered Richard's accounts. 2 years since everything shifted. Patricia and I had lunch to mark the anniversary. "Do you regret any of it?" she asked. "Some of it. I regret becoming so cold. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret teaching Jason consequences. He's a good man now. He's trying to be. That's all any of us can do." February brought news. Lisa was pregnant. Jason called me at 6 in the morning, barely coherent with excitement. "Mum, you're going to be a grandmother again, like a real one this time. You're a real father to Emma. I know, but we're having a baby. Lisa's due in September." I cried. Happy tears this time, uncomplicated by anger or pain. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. I went to doctor's appointments with Lisa, helped plan the nursery. Emma was thrilled to be a big sister. Jason was nervous but excited, reading parenting books, talking to other fathers. "I want to do this right," he told me. "I want to be the father Dad was." "You will be." "How do you know?" "Because you've learned from your mistakes. Because you're willing to try. That's all it takes." August arrived hot and humid. I was at the literacy center when Jason called. "Mum, it's time. Lisa's in labor." I met them at the hospital. The delivery was long but uncomplicated. At 2 in the morning, my grandson was born. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. They named him Richard. Jason handed him to me, this tiny, perfect baby. "Hi, Richard," I whispered. "Your grandfather would have loved you so much." The baby yawned. Jason stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder. "Mom, thank you." "For what?" "For everything. For not giving up on me. For teaching me how to be better. For being here." I looked at him. This man who'd once stolen from me and betrayed my trust. Who'd learned and grown and changed. Who was holding his wife's hand while she slept. Who had a daughter who adored him. Who'd just named his son after his father. "You did the work, Jason. I just refused to enable you. Still, I wouldn't be here without you." We stood there in that hospital room, holding baby Richard, while dawn light crept through the windows. And I thought about Richard, my husband, and how proud he'd be of this moment. Of our son, who'd fallen and gotten back up. Of our grandson, carrying his name forward. Outside, the city was waking up, people rushing to work, starting their days, living their lives. I'd been one of them once, just going through motions, surviving. Now I was living again, really living. "Mom," Jason said, "what are you thinking about?" "Your father. and how lucky I am to be here. We're the lucky ones. Maybe we both were. September and October passed in a blur of baby visits and sleepless nights for Jason and Lisa. I helped when I could, taking Emma for weekends, bringing meals, just being present. November arrived again, Richard's birthday. 3 years since he'd been gone. Jason and I went to the cemetery, but this time we brought baby Richard with us. "Hi, Dad," Jason said quietly. "I want you to meet someone. This is your grandson. I named him after you. I hope that's okay." The baby gurgled. I smiled through tears. "He's doing good, Richard," I said to the headstone. "Our son. He made mistakes, but he fixed them. You'd be proud." We stood there for a while, 3 generations united by love and loss and forgiveness. On the drive home, Jason said, "Mum, I need to tell you something." "What?" "I made the final payment on the loan this morning. It's paid off. All of it, with interest." I stared at him. "Jason, that was supposed to take 10 years. It's only been 2.5. I worked extra jobs, took every overtime shift I could. I needed it done. I needed to prove I could do it." "You didn't have to prove anything." "Yes, I did. To you. To myself. To Dad." He pulled into my parking lot and turned to face me. "Mum, I was a terrible son. I stole from you. I let my wife abuse you. I tried to take everything you had left, and you could have destroyed me completely. But instead, you taught me how to be better. You gave me a chance I didn't deserve. And I'm spending the rest of my life making sure I deserve it." "Jason, I mean it. Every day I wake up grateful that you didn't give up on me, that you loved me enough to let me fail and then helped me get back up. That's what a real parent does, and that's what I'm going to do for my kids." We sat there in the car, and I realized something. The revenge I'd sought 2 years ago hadn't made me happy. The satisfaction of watching Jason struggle hadn't healed anything. But this, watching him grow, change, become the man his father hoped he'd be, this was everything. "Your father and I love you," I said. "We always have, even when you made it hard." He hugged me. "I know, and I'm sorry it took me so long to deserve it." December brought Christmas and chaos. Emma insisted on making cookies, which resulted in flour everywhere. Baby Richard screamed through dinner. Lisa burned the ham, and it was perfect. Sitting at the table, surrounded by noise and mess and family, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From that moment of humiliation in a restaurant, to this moment of joy in a cramped apartment, from revenge to redemption, from anger to forgiveness. "Mom, you okay?" Jason asked. "I'm wonderful." And I was. January arrived quiet and cold. I was drinking coffee in my apartment when the doorbell rang. A courier with a legal envelope. Inside was a letter from Tom Willis's lawyer. Tom had died in prison. Heart attack. I called Patricia immediately. "Can they do this?" "They can try. But Martha, you reported a crime. You testified truthfully. They won't win." They didn't. The case was dismissed in March. But it left me unsettled. His family destroyed. Yes, he'd committed crimes. Yes, he'd hurt people. I asked Patricia this over coffee. She shook her head. "I wanted revenge against him too, at first, before I knew about the other victims. But you stopped. You forgave him. And when you learned he'd hurt others, you did the right thing. There's nothing to feel guilty about." I tried to believe her. April brought warm weather and baby Richard's first laugh. May brought Emma's dance recital. June brought Lisa's birthday. Life continued, beautiful and ordinary. I was happy. Not the frantic, desperate happiness of someone running from pain, but the quiet, steady happiness of someone who'd made peace with the past. Jason and I talked every week. We had dinner once a month. We weren't perfect, our relationship. There were still awkward moments, old wounds that twinged. But we were family. We were trying. That was enough. July brought a heat wave. I was at the park with Emma and baby Richard when a woman approached me. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. Martha Brennan. Yes? I'm Cassie's mother. We met at Jason's first wedding. My stomach tightened. Hello. I wanted to talk to you about my daughter. I don't think... Please, just 5 minutes. I glanced at Emma, who was on the swings. 5 minutes. Cassie is getting help. Therapy. Anger management. She knows what she did to you was wrong. She wanted me to tell you she's sorry. She could tell me herself. She's ashamed. She knows you have no reason to forgive her. I looked at this woman, her face lined with worry and regret. I don't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She hurt me deliberately. She helped destroy my son's life. I know, but people can change. Jason changed. Jason is my son. Cassie is nothing to me. Fair enough. She stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, watching what happened to her, losing everything, it changed her. She's not the woman who slapped you anymore. After she left, I sat on the bench, watching Emma play. Was I obligated to forgive everyone who hurt me? Did personal growth erase past harm? I didn't know. Some questions didn't have easy answers. August came. September. 3 years since that night at the restaurant. I was preparing dinner when Jason called. Mom, can you come over? There's something we need to talk about. My heart dropped. Is everything okay? The baby? Everyone's fine. Just come over. I drove there imagining disasters. But when I arrived, Jason and Lisa were smiling. Emma was bouncing excitedly. Baby Richard was asleep in his carrier. What's going on? We bought a house, Lisa said. A real house with a yard and 3 bedrooms. That's wonderful. And Mom, Jason said, we want you to move in with us. I stared. What? Not permanently, but there's a mother-in-law suite. Separate entrance, kitchen, everything. We thought you could live there, be close to the kids, but still have your independence. I have my apartment. We know, but Mum, we want you there. Emma wants you there. And honestly, Lisa and I could use the help with 2 kids. We'd pay you rent. Absolutely not. Then let us cook you dinner sometimes, or let Emma use your kitchen for baking projects. Just be part of our lives. Close by whenever you want. I looked at their hopeful faces, at Emma, who was tugging my hand, at baby Richard, sleeping peacefully, at this family I'd almost lost forever. Can I think about it? Of course. I thought about it for a week, about independence versus loneliness, about trust versus fear, about the future I wanted versus the past I'd survived. Then I called Jason. I'll do it, but I'm paying half the utilities. Mom, half the utilities or no deal. He laughed. Deal. I moved in November. The mother-in-law suite was perfect. Bedroom, bathroom, small kitchen, living area. Private but connected. Independent but together. Emma helped me unpack. Grandma, you're going to love it here. We can have tea parties every day. Maybe not every day. Most days. Some days. She grinned. I'll take it. January arrived with a crispness that made the air feel fresh and new, as if the world itself was giving me another chance. The holiday chaos had passed, but the peace that followed was just as loud in its own way. There was laughter in the house now, the kind that seemed to fill every corner of the space. Jason, Lisa, Emma, and even little Richard were the heartbeat of my life, their presence a steady rhythm that reminded me of how far I had come. I spent the early days of the year thinking about all the changes. What a difference it made to have my family together, not just in proximity, but in spirit. Jason had been working hard to rebuild his life, to earn back my trust, and though there were still moments of tension, they were fewer. Lisa, for her part, was nothing short of a stabilizing force in Jason's life and in mine. She was patient, understanding, And most importantly, she gave Jason space to be better without pressuring him to be perfect. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was more than I could have asked for. One morning, as I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, I found myself staring at the photo album Jason had given me on Christmas. I flipped through the pages again, feeling the weight of all the memories they held. There were so many moments I had thought I'd lost, so many years that felt irretrievable. But Jason had done something remarkable. He had captured those moments for me, in photos, in words, in love. The album wasn't just a gift. It was a promise, a marker of how far we had come. The picture of us at Richard's grave still hit me hard, but I no longer saw it with the same grief-stricken eyes. I saw it as a moment of healing, a moment that showed how much we had grown since then. Jason had changed, not overnight, but through countless small steps, and in doing so, he had made a new kind of family possible. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all of us, about what we could be together if we learned to forgive. Not forget, but forgive. The wounds we carried didn't need to define us. The scars were a part of us, but they didn't have to be the only story we told. I received a call from Patricia later that morning. "How are you, Martha?" she asked, her voice warm, but full of that knowing concern she always carried. "I'm good," I said, smiling even though she couldn't see me. "I'm better than good, actually." "That's good to hear," she replied. "I've been meaning to ask you, how are things with Jason? With the business? With everything?" I sighed, feeling the weight of it all in a way I hadn't before. "It's better. We're better. He's still working hard to make up for the past, but I see him trying. I see him changing. And I think that's all I can ask for now." Patricia was silent for a moment. "Martha, I'm proud of you. You've come a long way. I know it hasn't been easy, but you've built something real. And I think Richard would be proud too." I felt a lump in my throat. "I hope so," I said, my voice catching. "I really do." The weeks that followed were full of small but significant moments. Lisa and I began to spend more time together, talking about everything and nothing. Emma was always there too, her energy a constant reminder of the joy that life could hold, even in the most ordinary of moments. Baby Richard grew more every day, his little milestones a constant source of joy. Jason and I continued to have our talks, sometimes about the past, sometimes about the future. We talked about how far we had come, but also about how much work was still ahead of us. He knew that rebuilding trust didn't happen in a day or a year. It took time, effort, and consistency. But for the first time in a long while, I believed he was capable of it. One afternoon, Jason asked if I wanted to go out for lunch. I agreed, and we found a quiet little cafe on the edge of town. Over sandwiches and coffee, he looked at me with a sincerity that felt different from before. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," he began. "About how forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It's been a hard lesson for me, Mum. But I get it now. I know I hurt you, and I know I don't deserve forgiveness for everything I did. But I want to keep trying. For you, for myself, for the family we're building." I studied his face, looking for any signs of hesitation, but all I saw was a quiet resolve. A man who had done the work, who wasn't trying to hide behind excuses anymore. "I'm proud of you, Jason," I said, my voice steady. "I don't say that enough, but I am. I know it hasn't been easy for you, but I see you, and I see the change, and I'm glad you're part of this family." He smiled, a real smile, and for a moment I saw the boy he had once been, a boy who had lost his way but was finding it again. A March brought with it the promise of spring, the days longer and the air warmer. I had started volunteering at a local shelter, a way to give back and to feel connected to something larger than myself. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it felt important. It felt like a way to heal the parts of me that were still broken. One evening, as I sat in the shelter, I met a woman named Sarah. She was older, her face worn with the struggles she had faced in life, but there was kindness in her eyes. She told me about her children, how they had drifted away, and how she was trying to rebuild her own life. It reminded me of Jason, of the way I had once felt about him. But Sarah was different. She had been through so much, yet there was still a warmth in her heart, a hope that hadn't been extinguished. As we talked, I realized how far I had come. I had once been where Sarah was, lost, consumed by grief, by anger. But I had chosen to let go. I had chosen to move forward, to rebuild, and it had made all the difference. When I got home that night, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. I thought of Jason, of Lisa, of Emma, and of the life we were all creating together. I thought of Richard and the way he had always believed in second chances, in the power of forgiveness. I thought of how he would be proud of the family we were becoming. Spring turned into summer, and the house felt fuller than it ever had. There were more dinners, more laughter, more small moments that reminded me how much I had to be grateful for. Jason and Lisa were doing well, and though there were challenges, there was also love. Emma was growing more each day, her bright spirit a constant source of joy. Baby Richard, now toddling around, made everything feel even more real. One afternoon, Jason and I sat on the porch, watching the kids play in the yard. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything. It was peaceful, in a way I had never imagined it could be. "Mum," Jason said, his voice hesitant. "I've been thinking about something." I turned to him, waiting. "I think it's time I take over the business," he said. "I'm ready. Not just for me, but for the family. I want to carry on Dad's legacy. I want to make him proud." I studied him, trying to read the sincerity in his eyes. "Are you sure? It's a big responsibility, Jason." "I'm sure," he said, nodding. "I know I've made mistakes, but I've learned, I've grown, and I want to do this the right way." I smiled softly. "Then let's make it happen." And so, the next chapter began. Jason took over the business with a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to rebuilding it, this time the right way. He had earned it, just as he had earned my trust. And the summer passed in a blur of family moments, barbecues in the backyard, evenings spent playing board games, trips to the beach. We were building a new life, one step at a time, and for the first time in a long time, I realized how much I had to look forward to. One evening, as I watched the sunset from my porch, I thought of Richard. I thought of all he had given me, and all I had learned from him. I thought of the way he had loved me, by teaching me how to love myself. And I whispered to the sky, "Thank you, Richard, for everything." Then I closed my eyes, and I let myself believe in the future again.